You're good to go, Steve.
Hello, everyone. We are live, and this is my panel, the worst advice in game development, the 10 worst pieces of advice I've been given. My name's Steve D. I'm a game designer and publisher based in Sydney, Australia, and thank you very much to Unpub for letting me put this talk on. It's something I've had in my mind for a while because I think there is a lot of bad advice online. And we'll talk about that in a moment. So just a little bit in this first slide about me. As I said, thanks for coming along. Thanks for listening. If you've got any comments, I don't have the Twitch stream up, but they will hopefully be forwarded into the comments thread here for me to see. If you have any questions, let me know and I'll try to get to them at the end. I'd also like to ask you about bad advice you've received and good advice as well when we get to the end. You can find me online at tinstargames.com, which is my publishing company. We're about to launch a Kickstarter for a 18-card, 18-minute heist storytelling game called The Score. So look out for that if you can. Please at me on Twitter, or I'm also on the thing Mastodon now as well. But I'm still on Twitter. You can email me at that address. Let's see if these slides will work. Yes. So advice is a form of nostalgia. That is a quote from Mary Schmitz, who wrote a online column of advice that she'd collected that ended up being used as part of a weird remix techno song that was released in 1998 for the film Romeo and Juliet by Baz Luhrmann. The spoken word poem recital was quite popular on the radio, so that's where you might have heard it if you're an old person like me. It's a very simple quote to express a very large idea, that a lot of advice is in fact us looking back at our own lives and seeing what worked and pretending that that's a narrative that can be used for people. So advice is often poorly understood by the people who give it and thus poorly given. And I'm not saying, though, with this that all advice is bad. And I'm not saying that all the pieces of advice that I'm going to list here are all bad. I think we've got the wrong title in the top left-hand corner there. I'll just note that for my technical guy about co-design still in the top left there. So I'm not saying all advice is bad. I'm not saying all of this advice is bad. A lot of this advice has a core truth to it. What's often the problem with advice is that it's given poorly thought out. It's given in sound bites. It's given in, whoa, my slides are going crazy. Why are they doing that? It's given without context. And it's given in the sense that this is golden. Like, I've complained to people like, well, that advice doesn't apply for this X, Y, Z. And I said, well, obviously advice doesn't apply to advice that it doesn't. Obviously advice doesn't apply to the people it doesn't apply to. But if that is the case, then why are you giving the advice without that condition? We have to, I think a little bit better about how we give advice, especially in a world where we soundbite things down and go, always do this. The internet has made people very phlegmatic and very soundbitey, and they're like, this is the truth. In these 280 characters, this is the truth always and onward. And then, of course, people go, well, what about all these other things? And that's what causes a lot of drama on Twitter, because you can't actually talk with nuance. So when I say this, sometimes these are bad advice. What I'm saying sometimes is there's nuance here. And I want to talk about the grain of truth, and I want to talk about better conceptions. I want to talk about why it's bad advice and what we can do better. So for every piece of advice here, I've also got a larger way to think about the issue. So I'm going to talk about the advice itself, why it's bad advice, but how we can do better. All right, the first one is do it for the love of gaming. I'm sure we all know this one. And this is a piece of advice that can come in many, many levels. Anytime people complain about something, they complain about the money, they complain about the time, they complain that you're asking for any money at all. This often comes back to you should do it for the love of gaming, not for the money, not for the profit. And again, there's a little bit of truth in this. And that is that the money is generally bad in the gaming industry. It is generally awful. in the gaming industry, it's very, very difficult to get paid anything like a living wage for anything creative. This is not just true of the gaming industry. It's very, very difficult to get paid a living wage. There are reporters, there are singers, there are novelists, there are actors, comedians. Almost none of these people are able to make a living because there's just not a lot of money in the arts. And that means you have to be doing it for a passion or for enjoyment. You have to look for intangible rewards. That's very true. But the risk, of course, of that framing of do it for the love of gaming is, what else is there? You do, when you're working hard, you do want to get paid for what you do. And there are ways to turn these things into a salary, and that's something that you deserve for your hard work. People should pay for the arts. And I also find that if you're doing things for money, it actually sharpens your instincts and sharpens people's relationships with you. It helps to be a professional. And money and contracts and things like that are signposts that we can use to say, this isn't just a hobby for me. This isn't just a part-time thing. This isn't something that I don't take seriously. Money and contracts and saying, I would like to be paid, is a way of signaling to you, to the other people you're working with, to your audience, that this is something that is above and beyond your regular hobby project. Now, obviously, that isn't always a luxury. There are plenty of people who doing very professional work that can't charge for it. There are lots of my RPGs that I give away for free because I just can't make money. I ask for a donation instead. But yeah, I find that just the more you think about things as a job and as something that can be done for money, the better you understand the industry, the better you understand yourself, and the more you signpost that this is a professional engagement for you, for them, for others. So I always like to think about the money. Think about the money. You might not be a lot, but think about the money and think about that as a reason to do things. Think about where you're going with the money and what you're doing. Number 2, never work for free. So it's sort of the flip side to that one. A lot of people are very, very angry about this. And if you get onto certain spaces, I'm in actually some groups where if you suggest working for free, your comment will be removed. As seen as against the industry and against the health of the industry and the health of the individual. There is certainly a lot of people who think you should work for free and they want to take advantage of you. That's the nugget of truth there. But the fact is that there is no artistic work that doesn't involve free work in some capacity. And free work can be a great pathway, right? Money is not the only capital, I think, is how I think you should rephrase this. So again, we just said there are other returns. Money isn't the only capital, and it's not the only way to be paid. There really is benefits in exposure. There are. It doesn't mean that every artist should be paid in exposure. It doesn't mean that exposure should be our default. And that's where the advice comes from, of course, is that there's a lot of people who take advantage, who are predatory. But if you're inside the industry, you might want to work with somebody else who can increase your profile. Right? You might want to take an opportunity that can increase your profile, right? If I have my work shown in a gallery, I might not get paid for that. But I'm in a gallery, I'm being shown off to people. If I have my game being run at a convention, by other people, that might not be, I might not get paid for that, but I might be getting profile for it, I might be getting exposure, right? I might work for someone else and get paid in kind, where I write something for them, they write something for me. It doesn't feel, and it wouldn't necessarily, people might think of that as being not paid, but I was paid. I was paid in kind. I was paid in kind by someone who then tells all their friends about my game. Part of working in an industry is sharing the resources we have and the skills we have with the other people in the industry, and being willing to do that. It is a way of showing that you respect other people's time, and so you can go, look, this isn't going to cost me anything. I can definitely write a blog for you. I can definitely, throw something together for your website. I can put something in my game. I can put something in my Kickstarter. I can post about you, whatever it is. I can blog about you. I can share the wealth. I have some resources and I can lend them or share them with you, and you can repay me in kind, or you can just be part of the community. And it's really important, I think, to understand that we are part of a community, and sometimes that involves, working for free, especially when you're new and you're trying to establish yourself, or working for less, working for small amounts of money because you're trying to prove yourself and you're trying to show willingness to add value, to help out. Be careful when you work for free, but look at what you're actually being paid, and understand that there are things other than money. Money is not the only capital, and it's just a good attitude to be willing to get in and do work. And we'll come back to that again. Charge what your time is worth when you are billing. This one confused me for so long because it's very, very strange and very meaningless. It doesn't sort of have any kind of context to it. What does that mean? It reminds me of a quote, I think it's from Eisenhower, where he said that every dollar we spend on war is a dollar taken from someone else's mouth. Every time I'm doing something that's gaming, I'm doing something that I could be doing something else. So my time is incredibly valuable. My time is worth everything. Every second of my life is the most valuable thing I have. What is my time being worth mean? And I think what people are trying to say here is that it depends on what you can do easily and what takes effort. And that comes back to what we were just saying, that if there are things you can do easily, then there's things that you can share. If it's something that's hard, it's going to take a lot of time and a lot of work, then you might want to charge more for it. But the problem with the phrase in isolation is it doesn't give you any sense of what your time should be worth. You have to then go and do a calculation. You have to include with that, okay, so figure out, for example, what kind of salary you need. Do a budget. What is your income? What kind of income do you need in a month, in a year, whatever it is, in a week, to pay your rent, to pay your food bills? Right, now you know how much money you need. Therefore, you need to know, and then you figure out how much you want to work, right? Now you know what your time is worth. Now you understand, okay, I have to make $50 an hour, or at the end of the week, I'm not going to have enough money for the amount of work I want to do, or whatever it is, whatever or maybe it's $10 an hour or whatever. I want to work 20 hours a week on my writing. I need to make this much money. So how much is a single hour worth to me? That's one way to do it. The other way is, of course, is to understand the market that you work in, because a lot of the times when you do these numbers, you'll find that the market just won't support that. You have to understand what the tolerance of the market is. You have to do research, the other side of things. You can't just charge what your time is worth. That doesn't make any sense. If we were all being paid what we were worth, role-playing games would cost 10 times more. Board games would cost 5 times more. Nobody is being paid what they're worth, what their time is worth, what their expertise is worth. I'm not saying we're brain surgeons or rocket scientists, but we should be paid a lot more than we are. The market doesn't support that. And you need to understand how capitalist markets work. And they work by the customers deciding what they think your product is worth, and that determines what you can charge. It's got nothing to do with what your time is worth. You need to understand what the market will tolerate. And we'll come back to some of those facets again as well. Raise your prices again. Yeah, so this is another one. If you go onto a lot of forums for designers, Twitter, Discords, Mastodon, again, very, very passionate people who are like, you can't charge some figure, can't charge X, you must charge Y. If you charge X, you're letting down the industry, you're betraying your artists, you're betraying people, you're dragging the whole industry down by not valuing things properly. If you raise your prices, people will understand the value of your items, the value of the products. And that comes back to do it for the money. It is important to signal the value of your products with your prices. The problem with this one particularly is that it's usually said by people who have lucked into fame because of where they live, because of when they're online, because of somehow getting famous. And that doesn't necessarily mean that happened without any work, but they have a large enough audience who is really engaged with their product, so that audience will tolerate larger prices. they have already bought in to that person's product and that person's identity. So when that person says, my games are this, you get people willing to pay. So everyone's like, raise your prices, charge X for a PDF or this for a PDF. Now, I also don't believe someone should just go along and go, all your PDFs cost too much. You know, a digital thing should only cost X dollars. That's also false. Someone's saying the only place you can get away with raising their prices is Games Workshop. And look, that's a great example of what we're just saying. Thanks for that comment, Kodok, is that Games Workshop has a captive audience. A large part of their audience will buy everything they make, so they can afford to just raise their prices. They're not going to lose a significant portion of their market because they control that market and they're the only people who provide it. If you are providing something that is like a role-playing game, you have a very, very small market that is very, very picky. Same with small board games as well. You know, you are looking at somewhere between 1 to 10,000 sales. The very top end is 10,000, maybe 1 to 5,000 sales from an audience that is very picky and is very, very sensitive to small changes of barriers. And if you put that price up just a few dollars, you can lose a huge amount of your audience. And that kind of calculus is really, really hard to do. Some people, some products, some designers, some with certain audiences will get more money if they shift their prices up. You know, they can double their price and they might lose, you know, a third of their audience, so they've come out ahead. But I've found that sometimes if I just raise my price just a tiny bit, I go from, you know, 10 sales to 0 sales or 20 sales to 0 sales. If I drop it down, I can go from 5 sales to 40 sales. You know, if I go down to just pay what you want, I can get 10, 20 times more people buying my product because I'm dealing with tiny, tiny numbers very often. And I've been encouraged over and over again to raise my prices only to lose my markets. The market is complex. It is individual. It depends on the game. It depends on you. It depends on the audience you're able to build. And this comes back to like never working for free and understanding the market, right? There are times when you are going to put your products out for free because you are trying to build up your relationship with your customers so that later you can ask them to pay money. The truth is about customers is they want more stuff for free. Price is always going to be a barrier. It's always going to be something that your customers are going to think about. It's ridiculous to pretend otherwise. And it's bad advice. It is bad advice to just go, everyone should pay more. The community isn't always going to come with you, right? We can talk about building a community overall and individually for you that wants to pay more for their RPGs, but we're not there yet. The average person is still an average consumer and they still look at price and they still make their decisions based on price. And you need to figure out what is best for you, your product at this time with your audience and your market, and not just go, I should charge more. It's a good thing to think about. Can you nudge it up? But you might find if you nudge it down, you actually do a lot better. And, you know, screw the people who tell you otherwise. They're not necessarily on your side. Make the game you want to play. This is the one that's said all the time. And again, it's a bit like charge what your time is worth. It doesn't really make a lot of sense in context. There is no, you know, there's no context to this. Like, what does this mean? It means, I think what people are trying to say is make games that you like playing, make games that you are passionate about, figure out what inspires you. What are you passionate about, talking about, designing about, but also what are you good at? That's really important. There are plenty of games that you want to play that you are going to be bad at designing. You know, I want to play really complicated games. I want to play war games. I want to play Euro games. I can't design those. I don't have the skills. I don't have the temperament. I don't have the passion. And I don't want to sit up all night thinking, God, I should be Wolfgang Kramer. I should be Anton Bauer. You know, that's going to kill me. That's going to make me think, oh, I should be designing these games that I love to play, but I don't have the skills, and I don't also necessarily have the passion. There are other games that I want to play, I want to design, that are different. And obviously, you should design things that you do want to play, because you're going to be playing them over and over and over again, and play testing the crap out of them and demoing the crap out of them. So you need to enjoy that, because if you're hating playing it every single time you take it to the table, you're going to get worn out. So you should like the games you play, the games you design, and you should generally want to be playing them, although you can get burnt out. And I know plenty of designers who are like, I can't play that anymore because I designed it and I play tested it too much. That does happen. Not every game designer is going to be good at their game, is going to be enthusiastic about their game. It's not necessarily like, you might design a game that you're like, look, this is a really good drinking game, but I'm not really that kind of person. You might design games that you aren't the best audience for, but you are the best designer for. And getting obsessed about what do I really like to play is not always the best way to figure out what's good for you. Think instead about what you like to design, what your skills are in design, what excites you when playing, not so much about, oh, I really like playing Terra Mystica, but what I like about Terra Mystica is the different player powers. That's one thing I really like, and I bet I can design those. Or I really like the multiple paths to victory. Don't try to build a Terra Mystica. That might not be your skill set, but you might be able to build something that goes, oh, it captures some of that. So yeah, don't try to start from what do I like to play. Figure out what you want to design, figure out what excites you, and then experiment. And don't just go, oh, I should make game X. There's going to be plenty of games that you want to play that you can't design, and you shouldn't feel bad about that. Just keep making art. So this is another one that's inspirational, trying to get you started. A lot of advice like this, again, it comes back to context. We keep coming back to context. Early on, at certain times in your life, it is good to be motivated to keep making things. You are going to make things that are bad. You are going to struggle to make things sometimes. You are going to feel like you should give up. It is good to keep moving, but there are going to be times when you need to rest. There are going to be times when you don't have any ideas. And there are ways to get ideas, but there are also times when you just don't have any and you don't want to design. And you'll recognize this as you do more and more design. You'll go, oh, I've got a really good idea. I need to get to a paper. I've got something I want to get down. And it's really good to design at those times. And it's good to get into the habit of designing all the time, even when you're not feeling super enthused, and doing something on your projects. But it is also worth understanding that there are times when you just don't have anything that you want to write or design or create or draw. It was a huge disadvantage for me to have this sort of instilled in me that I should just write every single day, that I should design every single day as a young designer, because I often just had nothing I wanted to do. I didn't have any ideas, and I felt bad for not wanting to put things on paper. And it's really actually common. Once I did some research of this, a lot of young designers and artists struggle with this because they haven't done anything in their lives yet. You're 16 years old and you've barely been alive, and they're like, oh, write something every day. I'm like, well, what about? I haven't done anything. I don't know who I am. I don't know what I care about. I don't know what's important to me. And it was only when I was actually read another writer who said, I only write when I have something to say. And that just clicked something in my head. I'm like, oh, finally I can let myself off the hook. For all those times I've been staring at a page going, where's my idea? Where's my passion? Where's something I care about? It's like, no, you'll find it when you find the voices, when you find the channel of the things that you want to do. It'll open up and the ideas will come, and you'll have something to say, and you'll be ready to design. What they're trying to say is the discipline of designing when you don't feel like it, of creating when you don't feel like it, is useful. And it is always useful to try to make things, even if they fail. That's useful. But pushing yourself when you are empty is not going to create good art. It's just going to be you just going, you might as well just write rubbish. And that's actually a better idea, to just write the word, plumb 1,000 times just to get your fingers into it is actually better than trying to make up a story sometimes. You can just do physical muscle memory things, because that's really what the discipline is about. Neil Gaiman says that about when he's trying to get himself to write. He goes to his place and he can do nothing, or he can write. But those are the only two options. So he can't do something else, but he is allowed to just sit there and do nothing. And that's another way to think about it, is that, like, well, I've taught myself the discipline of setting time aside, but I don't have to do anything if I'm not ready. So that's another way to think about it. Again, a lot of it, if you read a bit further, you'll find better advice deep down from artists who have found ways to go, well, it's not just about discipline. It's understanding that there's nuance to discipline. This is another one that gets thrown around. It's just imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome is a thing. Well, it's not, although it's not really, it's not actually a syndrome. It is, but it is a very specific thing, and it gets talked about very generally and is actually very poorly understood. Imposter syndrome means one specific thing. It means you have succeeded, but you feel like you haven't. Neil Gaiman, again, describes being at a party where Neil Armstrong was there, and Neil Armstrong was like, I don't belong with these people. I didn't do anything impressive. All I did was do what Mission Control told me to do. I just went where they sent me, did what they said, and he didn't think that anything he'd done was worthy of praise. Imposter syndrome comes about because we have a conception of ourselves and we have a conception of celebrities. And when we become part of a group that we think is special, we don't feel like we've changed personally. And therefore we're like, well, hang on, I can't be part of that group, because that group I put into a box, and I'm me, and I'm not in that box. That was the definition of that box. So this feels weird. I should have changed so that I know that I belong here, but I haven't changed. So I feel a sense of clash of my conceptions. There was the conceptions of the famous people and the conceptions of me. Imposter syndrome is not other things. It is not, oh, I'm not sure if I'm good enough. Oh, I don't know what point my art is. I don't know if my art is developed enough to meet certain standards. I don't know what kind of artist I want to be. I don't know if I qualify to count myself like this. These are all other concepts of conceiving of yourself as an artist and understanding your own work and judging your own work that aren't imposter syndrome. They're not really the same thing. And if you keep calling them imposter syndrome, you're losing an understanding of what's going on. And there's also other parts to this. There's social anxiety of just like, well, hang on, I can't hang out with these people because I feel anxious, which isn't imposter syndrome. That's social anxiety. There's negative thoughts where you just go, well, all my work sucks, so of course I can't hang out with the people. That's not imposter syndrome. That's wearing perception glasses, changing your vision of your own work because you have negative emotions. So what I think the better thing to do here is to stop going, everything's imposter syndrome, and go, what is going on with my mental health? Being an artist is extremely hard on mental health. And if you have any kind of predisposition or issues with your mental health, and given that we're living through massive wars, depressions, environmental collapse, and worldwide plagues, everyone has a problem with their mental health. You need to look after it, and you need to understand it, and you need to go, well, what's going on with my brain? Do I need to have a psychologist? Do I need to read books? Do I need to talk to a GP? Talk to friends who know about these things? How do I understand my own brain, and how do I understand the distortions that my brain is putting on me? Instead of just going, oh, it's all imposter syndrome and imposter syndrome is silly. That's not going to help you. It's misdiagnosing the things that are happening in your brain. It's blurring the term imposter syndrome until it becomes impossible to use, and it's not helping you get a map to understand how to deal with your own brain. You are the tool of producing your art. You need to understand how to make that tool work as best as you possibly can. And that means understanding your mental health and taking time out to not just go, oh, someone on the internet or someone on TikTok said I was judging myself or I had imposter syndrome. It's more complicated than that. like art is more complicated than just something a piece of advice can go, and you really owe it to yourself to understand yourself. And it comes back to understand the market, understand the field. This is hard work. It's not just something that can be glib about. If labeling imposter syndrome helps you, it's good, but it's only a start. It's not going to take you the whole way. Grab every chance that comes along. Look, grabbing chances is important. One of the pieces of advice I've never forgotten is that Gary Oldman was doing an interview about his success as an actor. And he says that he wasn't the most talented person in his acting classes. He wasn't the most handsome. He wasn't the most charismatic. But he was the person who was applying, going to every audition and getting his headshots and getting out there and doing the work before anybody else. And being ready to go forward and take chances and to put yourself forward, that's important. But if you're grabbing every single chance that comes by, you can absolutely work yourself to death, drive yourself mad, and apply for things that don't really fit you. You know, it's great to extend yourself. It's great to go, hey, I could probably do that. I could probably do that. I'm not going to put myself in a box. I can learn. I can do things. But there might be things that you end up doing that you don't want to do. That's also worth knowing, to go, hey, I'm going to do this and find out if I like it. The problem comes is that in these days of the internet, we are hyper connected to every possible opportunity. You don't live in a small town where, you know, there's one showing of the yearly theater production, and if you don't audition for it, you have to wait another year. You will get, once you're plugged into any kind of social media in your email, you will get maybe an invite to a convention, an event, a competition once or twice a day. You know, there are more jams on Itch than there are human beings in the universe. You know, there's always about 100 jams on Itch, and everyone's excited and everyone wants you to contribute. And everyone, you know, your feed will make it appear as well on the internet, like, oh, everyone's talking about this. Well, 3 people are just actually sharing all the same tweets. It can feel exhausting. And it can crush you to be just constantly applying for things. It means you're not actually designing. You know, if you're so busy thinking about the next jam and how to make your next game, you're grabbing too much. You're not actually going, well, actually, I need to, you know, do this right now. You know, you wouldn't go to every single writing contest or every single audition. You know, if you were in a play, you're not going to go to audition for another play, and people are often doing that kind of things. With like, well, I'm busy writing for this jam and that jam, but also someone else has a competition, so I'm going to write a game for that, and I've got to get this game ready for that and this game ready for that, and you'll work yourself to death. You'll take opportunities that you just can't handle, and you're not being discerning. Again, it stops the thinking. If you're grabbing every single chance, you're going to not think carefully about, well, is this actually something that helps me? What input am I getting from it? Am I actually learning? Or did I just throw something in a bucket as I saw it go past? Like, oh, there's a jam. Throw that in there. Oh, there's something over there. Am I actually building an audience? Am I actually connecting with anyone? You know, or did I just see a bundle and go, yep, my game should be in there? If you're not actually taking time to build from these things, whether it's learning something, building your brand, building a piece of art, you know, building something that you're proud of. Like, I've designed great games that I started on because of jams or competitions. Yes. But if I tried to do that for every single jam and every single competition, you know, I wouldn't be developing my games. In this day of the internet, opportunity never stops knocking, right? We used to say opportunity knocks but once. I think that's a Shakespeare quote, but opportunity is pounding on your door every single morning when you log on. It's like saying, hey, here's 10 things that you could be using. Here's 10 courses you can do. Here's 10 books you can read. Here's 10 YouTube videos you've already missed out on. Here's 15 jams that you should have been part of. Here's a bundle you didn't submit to. It's not good for you. And I try to actually, I've had to put like a little like limits on it. Just go, I'm only going to look at opportunities at certain times of the day or certain times of the week, because there's just too much of it, and it becomes impossible to sort. And it ends up doing you a disservice. You can't be everywhere. Even if, especially if you're building an audience, like your audience is like, well, hang on, he's over there, and now he's over there, and oh, I can't keep up. take time to just go, look, we're going to be at maybe 3 conventions a year or something, not every single convention, or we're going to really commit to this convention or whatever it is. Every situation, there is always more opportunity than you can possibly do. You have to sort it. You can't just be like, yes. You can't say yes to every single thing that gets handed to you. It's just too much, particularly now. Change the rules of the system. So again, there's a glimmer of truth in all of these pieces of advice. I'm not saying that some of these things are wrong. A lot of the time, we have at the moment a generation, late millennials, early Zoomers, and look, this is going to sound very old person-y, but a lot of people come into a system and go, this system doesn't work. How do we fix it? How do I break or change the system so that it supports what I want it to be? And that's a good instinct. It is a good instinct. It's one thing that the young people have of, how do I break this? How do I change this? Because when you're new to something, you can see things that other people can't. You have a desire to change things. And there are some things that can be changed. But there's often, if everything, if all you have is a hammer, then everything looks like a nail. And some people's hammer is, the rules should be changed. This doesn't work for me. This is not how I want it to work, so we have to change the system. And you can't change a lot of the system. I've been in the game industry something like 30 years. I've seen so many people come in and go, this thing is broken, I'm going to fix it. And they don't. And they burn out and they disappear. Sometimes they do make some important changes. And some, as I say, sometimes that's really important to listen to those voices. But there's a lot of people who show up in this industry and go, this doesn't work, and I'm angry, and we must change it. Like, well, there's a reason it doesn't work. You can't just magically do these things. And the classic example of things like raising prices that we've already talked about. You can't just go, well, obviously, games should cost more. All right, so I'll just change things. I'll just change how much games cost. And you might be the person who has the magical big enough audience that you can do that, but not everybody can. And you don't get to act like you're smarter than everyone because you figured this out. A lot of people do that. It's like, well, I just managed to change my prices and everybody followed me. Yeah, but not everybody can, because everyone else is also operating this machinery. You can't just go, well, more people should play RPGs, so let's just change that. Well, how? How are you going to do that? There are certain things that are fairly baked into any system that are hard to change, because people are hard to change, because audiences are hard to change. And if there is change to happen, it will be slow. You can't just move fast and break things. Disruption is often a myth. It's often a point of view by someone who doesn't actually understand the system. So if you're going to think you can change everything to suit you, you're going to run into trouble. And a lot of the advice out there is like, well, if you don't like it, change it. Get in people's faces, outthink the system, think outside the box, be creative. There's got to be a way to, make money that nobody's thought of. It's like, that's actually insulting to people in your industry as well. If you walk into an industry and go, all of you people are wrong, I know it better than you. Well, you sound like Elon Musk. You sound like someone who doesn't actually understand it. And you're telling everyone, I think you're idiots. Outsider perspective is important, but you're telling your fellow colleagues, you are dumb. You haven't figured out, and I have. And I'm possibly been in the industry much less than you. That's just not a good idea, to tell everyone else around you that they're idiots. It's good to be revolutionary. It's good to try to push the envelope, but to walk in and just go, you're all idiots, you never saw it, I did. Do you think people want to be your friend? Do people want to work with you? No. Did you acknowledge the problem? Did you acknowledge their struggle? Did you understand the machinery that they're operating in? Did you see the boots on their neck? Or did you just assume that because you don't have a boot on your neck, there isn't one on theirs? So it's really important, I think, as part of trying to think outside the box, to go, what is the machinery going on? What is the industry like? How does it operate? Listen to people. Do your research. And that comes into this last one, which is a little bit controversial, perhaps. I don't want to go all Fight Club on you, but there is, there is a thing where some people think that the game industry or the world should be designed to suit their needs, that they are a special snowflake, that everything should work for them. And they come into the industry with high expectations. They believe that because they're an artist, they should be given an audience. They should be given a success. They should be given a wage, and then they're angry that these things don't happen. Without doing their research, without understanding all the machinery, without understanding why you can't just always raise your prices, why you can't just charge what your time is worth. You are not special. Everyone else in this industry is just as good as you, and you are replaceable. And that's an important thing to remember. It is true that the world sort of needs your game, and your voice is important. There's someone out there who needs to play your game, and that matters. But it's more important that you make the game for you. Doesn't matter if the world needs your game. You need your game. And everything else is not going to be handed to you. You make your game. You do your best to try to get an audience, to try to get money. But you're not special, and you're not owed any of this. And what I want to rethink of people about is you need to add value to the system. And this comes back to things like working for free as well, and giving things away for free. You have to add value to a system if you are going to get people to trust you, to like you, to want to work with you, to buy your products, whatever it is. You're asking people to invest in you effectively. When you are working in an industry, whether you're selling a product to an audience, whether you're selling your skills to a publisher, selling your ideas to a publisher, selling your skills to an employer, you're asking people to invest in you, and you need to be ready and willing to show how you add value to a system. And if you come into any kind of work or art form with the idea of, I'm already special, I'm important, look at this game that 1,000 people backed or something, or whatever it is, or I've mistaken my large audience online that I've happened to luck into, or some success that proves that I'm good, that I'm good at this, that I'm skilled, after only a tiny amount of time in the industry, people are going to look at you, well, you haven't actually added much value. Yes, okay, you've done something impressive. Maybe you've got an audience, maybe you've had one hit. That's good. That shows that you've got some skill and some work, but how are you adding value to me? How are you adding value to my company? How are you adding value to something that I want to buy? And you can't ever get ahead of yourself and go, well, hang on, I deserve this. You should all just beat a path to my door. I've made the better mousetrap. Beat the path. You might have, you might not have, but what you're always in a conversation with people is, I need you to believe that I'm adding value. And if you do trust that, then you're going to give me jobs, you're going to give me opportunities, you're going to give me money for my work. And that's a good way to think about it. Not, I'm an artist, I deserve your attention. You're having a conversation with a person. Effectively, all art is a personal conversation with someone. And in fact, most of life is really, sales really is as well. We do it at proxy, but we're having a conversation with someone saying, I'm trying to add value to your life, and I think that's worth money. And that's really, if you can actually communicate that, that's how you get sales. That's how you get people to trust you, and how you get people to believe in you and say, I am trying to give you an incredible thing. And here's all the work I've done and all the effort that I put in. I'm trying to make that visible to you. That's how you ask people to trust you and get an audience. If you do that, people will respond. People will respond when they see that you're putting in an effort and you're trying to add value to their lives. I asked for people to send in bad advice they've got before as well. Here's some other examples. So just some general things. So people are saying, just send it in, the editor will fix it up. Again, some kernel of truth there if you're very worried about things, but you've got to do the work. You've got to make things as good as you possibly can get them before you show them to people. Again, that's adding value. Someone said, fix your favorite game, add something like to it. That can be a very difficult thing. If you go in and go, right, I really like Terra Mystica, but I think I want to add, I want to completely change how Magic works. That's a very hard thing to do when things are very connected. Or I really like D&D, but I want to completely rethink Initiative. You might not be able to do those things when they're very complicated. You want to think more about adding small elements like, hey, can I design a balanced race for Terra Mystica? Can I design a balanced class for D&D? Say yes to everything. Like, yes, I can definitely do that. Lie on your resume. That's something that people have been told and then backfired on them. Be honest about your strengths and your weaknesses, but don't be afraid to stretch yourself. You can go, look, that's something I'm not comfortable with, but I'm going to try. It's better to be honest and clear and forthright than to say, I can definitely do everything. People would rather, again, work with you as someone who's honest and direct. Definitions of success, of course, are big. If you're not going to make money, you're not going to make this many money, you're not going to sell this many copies, you should give up. You're a failure. Success is defined like this. That's definitely bad advice. And this is a flip side to things like do it for the money. Just because if you've made the decision to make money, then of course you can use that as a metric, but you have to be realistic. And if you've decided to get other kind of returns, then you that's another thing. So beware of other people's definitions of success, I think, was really coming out of that. You should give up. That was a lot of people got that apparently as bad advice. Obviously, again, this comes back to advice is more about the person who gives it. It's their nostalgia. And they've thought, well, you haven't done as well as me, so you should give up. Or I gave up, so you should give up. Of course, the opposite is also true. Someone, again, has a survival bias. They was like, I worked on this over and over and over again, and then I finally solved it, and it became a hit. Like, that was the true of that story. That was that narrative of that game or that product or that process. I might be at an impasse that I can't solve. Your story does not necessarily contain truth for my story. Advice is a form of nostalgia. It's people going, with survivor bias as well, this is what worked for me. It will probably work for you because I want to believe in the myth of myself. Your game is completely fine. That's, again, advice like, yeah, your game is great. Send it off. It'll be great. Your game could probably use improvement. Nobody's game is really that great. Very, very few are unless they've been through a long development and playtesting process and you're a genius, your game could always use more work. And beware of the voice that says your game is completely fine, send it in. It comes back to just send it in, the publisher will work on it. You can always take it for another run. Of course, the opposite again. Someone's going to say, your game is broken, doesn't really work. It's exactly like this. It's just Cascadia, but with ducks. And I've seen that before. And it doesn't work because I hate this mechanic. A lot of people, again, are going to tell you a narrative that isn't actually true. They're just going to be like, well, and again, that may be about, I designed that's exact same kind of game and it didn't sell, so it can't sell. Like, that can be useful information if they're talking about the machinery, but beware of universalities. Like, they're probably looking at this story of their own lives and making that into nostalgia. And this comes to the similar to the next one. People are like, oh, this should be a video game. This should be, or the rest, this should be a tabletop game. You might not have the resources for that. You might not be able to make those things. And again, they're guessing about the market and the industry. They're guessing about the resources you have. It can be good advice, but it also is something that's thrown around pretty easily without thinking about what are the resources you have. So, if someone says that to you, you got to go, well, why do you say that? And how do we make that happen? One of the things, there's a really good, I think it's an Aesop's fable that I think is really important about advice as well. It's just occurred to me. There's a fable called Belling the Cat. So there's these mice and they go, okay, there's a cat in the house. We need to put a bell on the cat so we know that it's coming. That way we won't get eaten by the cat. So they go, this is a brilliant idea. Whoever, belling the cat, this is the best idea we've ever had. Who's going to do it? And everyone's like, I'm not going to put a bell on a cat. That would be stupid. I would get eaten. And nobody wants to do it. And that comes back to adding value. A lot of people are really like, I have a really good idea. I don't want to do it. And if you walk up to someone and go, your game is perfect, but it should be this, or your game won't work unless it's this, they have a right to go, well, can you help me? And if you can't, why did you say it? Are you actually helping? You're giving them you think you may be giving them this great idea. They might have already considered it. So you've got to do these things with humility and also think about, how can I take the next step? Advice without assistance is often just judgment. And the next one is also about judgment, where people are like, well, you know what's selling? Zombies. You know what I like? Vampires. This game is really good, but it needs asymmetrical player powers. This game is really good, but it's got to have cute animals. That's how we're going to sell it. Or, you know what you should put in this game is, a really strong narrative, a legacy element. It's just people rehearsing a narrative that they think works. And it's, again, a myth of their own story, their own background, their own success or other people's success that they've mythologized into a strategy. And it becomes almost like a fetish, like a good luck charm, right? And sometimes these things work. There was a time, and there still is, if you put vampires in a young adult novel, you will sell. I've been to a lot of talks about the book industry, and they always say, don't follow trends. It's never a good idea. Brackets, except vampires, brackets. There are sometimes some things that just are worth thinking about putting in your game. Most of the time, it's usually not worth it. It's better to just be original and write something that you're passionate about. Don't just make art. Don't just make something that you want to read because you might be caught up in a trend. Try to figure out what you're actually passionate about. Not just, I really like reading, I really like reading, I really like watching Game of Thrones. So I'm going to write Game of Thrones. Maybe not the best idea. Maybe you don't really have the skills to write or the passion to write something like Game of Thrones. You've just decided, that you like it and it's popular. Great comment here from Dino Corgi. This is a really good 2-player game. Can you make it work for 6? Yeah, so this is a really common thing right now because it comes back to sort of things we were saying earlier about price. People are terrified of pinch points in customers. And pinch points in customers are, people come into looking at a game, they want to go, okay, does it work for 2? Does it work for 1? Because I don't actually get the games to the table. Does it work for 5? Does it work for 6? These are very common pinch points. And marketing advice will often go, look, because we're going to lose 10, 20% people if it's not a solo mode, you better put a solo mode in there. And that's marketing advice. And it's not completely baseless, but there are so many times where now, after hearing all that, we now hear, it's got a solo mode, but it's not good. It's not that, and it's often really hard to make solo games out of these games. And I think a lot of customers would rather see honesty going, this game has no solo mode. We're not going to do that because we think it dilutes the quality of the game. We'd rather give you a really good 2 to 4 player game experience, or 2 to 5 or whatever, 3 to 5, and not play that game of marketing with you. Now, of course, that's risky. Marketing is very precarious, and a lot of people will just tune out. And you have to think about that, but you have to think about it carefully. An excellent question. Given the choice between lowering physical product quality and raising prices, what's the best option? Look, that is a really tough question. And I think it comes back to the marketing is individual. The market is complex and individual. It depends on what your product is, and what your audience is. And it's a really tough choice. It depends on what your audience wants, what they value, and there isn't an easy answer. We all want to make our games as beautiful and as high quality as possible, and we all know our audience doesn't want to pay for it. And what you can try to do is communicate your values to the audience and make a choice and go, look, we want this. If lower price points is your value, then you're going, look at this, it's cheap. We've made this game as discount as possible for all our Kickstarters. You can get this for $60 instead of $80 or something. That's our value. That's something we want to do for you. Or you go, look, we've spent extra money investing in the quality of our channels. We want to pay everyone really well. That's why we're hitting this price point. Both of those are narratives that aren't completely true. And a lot of the problem with this, with me sort of giving you this perfect advice, is that customers aren't going to listen. You can make a choice that is the right choice for you, and customers aren't going to care. And they're just going to go, no, I feel like you're not giving me value. I feel like you're lying to me, or that just costs too much. But you might get lucky. And a lot of this is just going to be a guess, I don't know when I put a product up if I should put it at pay what you want, or please pay $1 for this and it's got a fixed dollar on it. There's definitely things I priced too high and I paid for by selling less. And there isn't an easy answer to that. Sometimes you just have to go, well, this comes back to understand the machinery and understand the conditions you're in. You may be in an industry where it costs too much to make a product that you can sell to make profit. You might just be like, oh, the market will not tolerate a price that leads to me making money. And then you've got to ask yourself, well, then why do I do this? And that's a fair question. Instead, should I put the game out for free? Should I just give it to my friends? I hope that helps answers some of those questions for you, Ko. But it is true that sometimes it is just impossible to make a choice that ends up with you making money. Puppy Shogun says, could you pick 1 point from the 10? Which one do you think is the worst advice? The worst advice probably is charge what your time is worth, or raise your prices, because I think those are just really don't understand the industry or how people think. They don't actually have any good context to them. And they don't understand how capitalism works and how market works. And you should understand economies. You should understand that it is possible that the market cannot tolerate prices that you think you should be paid, or that are fair. It just doesn't work like that. So people who tell you with incredible passion, like, you should charge this much for a game, you should never pay people less than this, you should never drop your prices below this, you should never charge, it should never work for free. I don't think those people understand how markets work. I think they're in a bubble where I've managed to be paid, and everyone else can just learn what I've learned and not realize that they've been lucky. And a lot of this is luck. And they just go, well, not everyone has the same chances as me. Some people have been going, look, I need to get a game online and I'm going to charge nothing for it today because I need people to, like, the first games I was playing, I was really, really poor when I was trying to get my games exposed, when I was first trying to be a publisher. And I just printed games for free. The cheapest thing I could do was just print games for $50, run off 100 copies and just give them out for free, because that was a way to get to an audience. And if people had said, oh, you should charge $1 for that, I wouldn't have given any of them away. Understand that the market is complicated. Got a minute left. If anyone else has some other questions, please send them through. You can always get me at Tinstar Games with a 1 at the end. So tin, like the metal, star, like the thing in the sky, games, and then a single 1. That's me on Twitter. I'm also Tinstar Games on Facebook. I'm Tinstar Games on Mastodon. I'm Tinstar Games on all sorts of things, on Instagram and on TikTok. I did want to put in some good advice as well. This is some advice from the movie Roadhouse, which is a silly movie from the 80s with Patrick Swayze. His 3 pieces of advice when he's being a cool bouncer at a club are actually things that I think are pretty good advice. And I often point people to them. Expect the unexpected. The industry is going to change. Take it outside. Don't bring a lot of your beef in to people. Don't start fights. Don't be a dick. If you've got problems with people, then don't deal with it in the industry. Deal with it elsewhere, and be nice. It comes back to adding value. Be nice is a really good piece of advice. You have to work with these people in the industry. You have to work with your customers. Be nice. Be as nice as you possibly can. That's going to serve you well. I have to wrap up now, though. I'm getting the signal, guys. So please, any more questions or comments, grab me online, send me an email. Happy to answer. And thank you all for coming today.